Power systems are pretty commonplace in anime. Some are easy to understand and some are a bit more complicated. Today we're going to be breaking down one of the more complicated power systems, that being Cused Energy. Cused Energy is the power system native to Jujutsu Kaisen. It's fairly similar to Nen from Hunter x Hunter, but a bit less complex. Regardless of its complexity, I have seen some people online having issues understanding it, so I thought creating a video that covers all of its aspects could be helpful to those who need it. So let's get started. Cused Energy is basically the manifestation of negative emotions, such as fear or anger. These emotions can be curated by everyone, and as such, everybody has some amount of Cused Energy. Well, almost everyone. When enough of these negative emotions gather, curses form. These curses can range from slightly annoying to very deadly, but we'll come back to them later. It is important to mention that not everyone can see curses or Cused Energy despite being able to create it. Only people who generate a lot of Cused Energy are able to see curses. This ability to see curses is the bare minimum for Jujutsu Sorcerers. Jujutsu Sorcerers are able to harness Cused Energy for multiple purposes, from creating cursed items to manipulating the energy into cursed techniques. Cursed items include cursed tools, cursed objects, and cursed corpses. These cursed items can also be created from Cused Energy via normal collection means. To quickly overview these items, cursed tools are tools infused with Cused Energy. Like curses and sorcerers, they come with a grade. The most obvious example of a cursed tool is Playful Cloud. A cursed object is basically a curse that is in an object instead of in a spirit. Some examples of these would be Skuna's fingers, or cursed wombs. And a cursed corpse is a non-living object that has been imbued by a curse and has gained sentience as a result. The most obvious example of this is, of course, Panda. Now, let's move on to Cused Energy manipulation, which is probably the most complicated part of Cused Energy because it can vary a lot. Cused Energy manipulation is basically how Jujutsu Sorcerers learn how to control Cused Energy. It takes immense training and practicing control of your emotions. This control results in Jujutsu Sorcerers leaking less Cused Energy than regular humans. Once a sorcerer is able to manipulate their Cused Energy, they can apply it in different ways. In some cases, we can see it being used offensively by channeling Cused Energy into certain body parts, such as Yuji with his fists. We can also see the same method being used defensively throughout the show. Weapons can also be imbued with Cused Energy via this method. If done over time, this will turn the weapon into a cursed tool. When Cused Energy is applied to a physical attack within a trillionth of a second, the user achieves a black flash, which deals 2.5 times the damage of the original attack. Cused Energy manipulation is an important aspect of developing a cursed technique. Cursed techniques are abilities that use Cused Energy to fulfill a purpose. The analogy used in the show is that Cused Energy is like electricity, and when cursed techniques are applied, it is like using an electrical appliance in a kitchen. Cursed techniques can fall into a few categories, the first of which being an innate technique. The best way I can describe innate techniques is that they're basically just techniques sorcerers just have. There's no specific reason that innate techniques develop that we know of right now, other than just having a natural talent for Jujutsu. They generally manifest around age 6 and are unique to the user. They cannot be copied and are generally accepted to be the majority of a sorcerer's skill set. These innate techniques can have extensions, which occur when an innate technique is honed to maximize its applications. An example of a user with an innate technique would be Nanami with his ratio technique. Nanami has an extension of this technique called Collapse. The next kind of technique is an inherited technique. These are innate techniques that can be passed down through the bloodline of sorcerer families. Inherited techniques come with some pros and cons. The pros being that they are generally more powerful techniques and they come with a manual for how to use them from previous users. The cons are that the abilities have already been studied and opponents are able to determine strengths and weaknesses more easily than innate techniques. Some examples of inherited techniques are the Limitless technique from the Gojo family and the 10 Shadows technique from the Zenin family. The next category of cursed techniques is barrier techniques. These are a little bit more complicated. Barrier techniques allow the user to create a barrier in the world. It can be used to hide areas, trap opponents, and more. Barrier techniques can range from very simple to very complicated, and as such, the strength and purpose of a barrier requires a certain expertise. Within barriers, there are 3 techniques worth noting. The first is a curtain. This technique is your standard barrier, and it's primarily used to hide Jujutsu from the outside world. The second is a simple domain. These are generally used as a self-defense mechanism against domain expansions. However, there are some sword-based techniques from the new Shadow style that are for counter-attacking as well. The third and final is domain expansion. But to talk about domain expansion, we first need to talk about our sorcerer's innate domain. The innate domain is a part of a sorcerer's mind where cursed energy can be manifested. This is what is responsible for the incomplete domains we see a couple of times throughout the show. Domain expansion takes the aforementioned part of the mind and manifests it into a separate space to trap the opponent. Once inside, it is almost impossible to escape, and the caster of the domain has greatly increased attack power and perfect accuracy. Domain expansion is generally accepted to be the most powerful Jujutsu technique. The final category of cursed energy manipulation is reversed cursed techniques. Reverse cursed techniques take cursed energy and reverse it into positive energy. This is done by taking cursed energy from 2 different sources and multiplying them together. This turns the cursed negative energy into positive energy. Reverse cursed techniques are generally used for healing, but in certain cases, reverse cursed techniques will literally reverse the cursed technique. Does that make sense? This is the case for Gojo, as his blue technique is used to pull in and his red technique is used to push away. Reverse curse techniques are supposed to be complex in nature, and I think they are meant to confuse the viewers to reinforce this complexity. The last aspect of cursed energy as a whole that I want to talk about is cursed restrictions. While cursed energy does rely on negative emotions for its power, it also relies on risk. The higher the risk a sorcerer is taking, the more powerful their technique is going to be. This is why revealing the effects of one's cursed technique makes it more powerful. Cursed restrictions can also allow for more powerful cursed techniques. By placing a condition on a technique, the technique is restricted, and once those conditions are met, the technique can be used. This will also add additional risks to the technique, which will make it even stronger. This can be taken to an extreme with a binding vow. A binding vow is basically a binding contract created through cursed energy. Abiding by the vow will increase power, but breaking the vow will have adverse negative effects. A binding vow can be made between 2 different entities or between one person and themselves. By placing a binding vow on yourself, you will be able to create more complex and powerful techniques, as we mentioned earlier. The best example of a binding vow upon yourself is Overtime, a binding vow Nanami placed upon himself. Another kind of cursed restriction is a heavenly restriction. This is a cursed restriction that is placed upon a person at their birth, and it creates limitations for the sorcerer that can range from bodily to mental. In return, people with a heavenly restriction gain extreme capabilities in the category opposite where the restriction was placed. For example, Mekamaru has an extreme physical heavenly condition, and in return he gets a high amount of cursed energy. Maki, on the other hand, has no cursed energy, but has a much higher physical capability because of it. There is one additional cursed technique that is currently manga exclusive. So if you are not a manga reader, please skip to the outro or just exit the video now. Either one is fine with me. So the final curse technique I'm talking about is, of course, maximum techniques. A maximum technique is an innate technique's most supreme art. They are the most powerful attack a user can perform outside of domain expansion. We don't know much about them past that, but I wanted to mention it for any manga readers. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, please feel free to join our Discord, follow me on Twitter, whatever you want. Also, please make sure you're subscribed. It really does help me out a ton. As I said, thanks again, and I'll see you next week.